Disclaimer: this story is a work of fiction based on emotionally intense real-life situations. It contains mature themes including infidelity, emotional betrayal, and psychological conflict. The purpose of this narrative is to explore the human side of complex relationships, not to promote or glorify unethical behavior. Reader discretion is strongly advised. It started with a phone call I didn't expect. It was a quiet Thursday evening, and Emily, my wife, was just finishing dinner when her phone rang. She answered with a bright smile. "Lena." "Oh my God, how are you?" I didn't think much of it at the time. Lena had always been Emily's closest friend since college, vibrant, wild, the kind of person who lit up a room and left it in flames. I knew Lena was going through a messy breakup with her boyfriend, but I had no idea how much it had unraveled her. The call ended with Emily looking at me, hopeful. "Lena wants to come over, maybe stay for the weekend. She just needs a place to clear her head." I nodded. I didn't mind. We had the space, and truthfully, I felt sorry for her. A weekend wouldn't hurt. When Lena arrived later that night, something felt different. Her eyes were tired, her smile thin. She hugged Emily tightly, but looked at me for a second too long. I brushed it off. She had always been friendly, maybe even flirty, but nothing that crossed a line. She brought only a small duffel bag and a pillow clutched tightly under one arm like a child carrying comfort. Emily offered her the guest room, and I helped carry her things in. Lena thanked me softly, her hand lingering just a second longer on mine. The weekend began with laughter. The three of us stayed up late, drinking wine and playing board games like we were all college kids again. Lena told stories about her toxic ex, and Emily comforted her, arms wrapped around her like a sister. I stayed quiet most of the time, watching the way Lena looked at Emily with love and occasionally glanced at me with something I couldn't quite name. By Sunday night, Lena made no mention of leaving. She casually mentioned a job interview she had on Tuesday, just across town. Emily immediately told her, "Stay as long as you want. Your family." I nodded again, silently. As the days turned into a week, small changes became noticeable. Lena started waking up early to make breakfast. She sat beside me when Emily left for work, asking questions, laughing at things I said that weren't funny. She'd casually touch my arm, my shoulder, once even brushed my hair from my face while saying, "You look tired. Everything okay?" I told myself she was just being kind. She was hurting, vulnerable. I was reading too much into it. But that night, as I watched her walk barefoot from the bathroom to the guest room in just an oversized t-shirt, my t-shirt, I realized something had shifted. Not just in her, but in me too. And I had no idea how dangerously close we were drifting. The days following Lena's weekend stay blended into an odd rhythm. What started as temporary comfort turned into a silent arrangement. She didn't bring it up, and neither did Emily. The guest room was no longer a guest space, it was Lena's room now. Her things slowly started appearing in other parts of the house. A pair of shoes at the door, her phone charger plugged into the kitchen outlet, her shampoo bottle sitting beside Emily's in the shower. Emily didn't mind. In fact, she welcomed it. "She needs us right now," she said one morning as she packed her lunch for work. I was still sipping coffee, barely awake. "You've seen how broken she is. We're giving her a safe place. That's all." Safe. That word stuck with me. Emily had recently taken on longer shifts at the hospital, covering for a colleague on leave. That meant I was home more often with Lena. At first, it was innocent. She'd make me coffee before I even walked into the kitchen. We started watching a few morning shows together, then afternoon ones too. Her laughter began to feel familiar, her scent oddly comforting. She talked a lot. About her ex, her regrets, her loneliness. I listened because I don't know. Because no one else seemed to. Lena had a way of making every conversation feel like a secret just between the two of us. One afternoon, as we sat in the living room while it rained outside, she said, "You know, Emily's lucky. You're such a calm presence. Most men I've known were chaos." I smiled politely. "I'm not perfect. Believe me." She tilted her head and looked at me, eyes narrowed slightly. "Still, I can see why she loves you. It was a compliment, but something about the way she said it made me pause. Her tone wasn't playful. It was sincere. Too sincere. I tried to keep boundaries. I made excuses to work in the garage or stay out longer than usual. But the more I pulled away, the more Lena seemed to draw closer. She began dressing differently, less like a guest and more like someone who belonged. Leggings, soft t-shirts, sometimes no bra. Things that were casual, but not to me. One evening, as we passed each other in the hallway, she stopped and looked up at me. There was a long silence. "You're not like him," she said softly. "Who?" "My ex. You listen. You care." Then, just as quickly, she smiled and walked away. I stood there, confused, my heart racing for no reason I could justify. When Emily returned that night, she was exhausted and grateful Lena had made dinner. She kissed me on the cheek, and I felt a wave of guilt rise up in my throat, even though I hadn't done anything yet. Nothing happened. But something was happening. It was subtle. It was slow. It was dangerous. And I was starting to wonder if I was still in control of it at all. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon when everything shifted, though the change was so delicate, it almost felt unnoticeable. Emily had just left for her double shift at the hospital. I was working from home, trying to focus on spreadsheets and emails, but I couldn't concentrate. Lena was in the kitchen, humming to herself as she made lunch, moving through our home like she owned it. I told myself I was being dramatic. She was just grateful. She was trying to be helpful. That's all. But that afternoon, something happened that I couldn't ignore. The rain had started again, tapping gently on the windows. Lena knocked softly on my office door, holding 2 mugs of tea. "You've been at that screen for hours," she said with a warm smile. "Come take a break." I hesitated, but stood anyway. Maybe I needed one. We sat on the couch in the living room, the TV quietly playing in the background. She tucked her legs under her and looked at me, not just at me, but into me. "You always seem so collected," she said after a while. "I'm not," I replied. "I just don't show the mess. I like that about you." There was a beat of silence that seemed to stretch far too long. I reached for my mug, trying to find something else to focus on, but then Lena shifted closer, just slightly. Her knee touched mine. "I used to dream about being with someone who makes me feel safe," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "Someone who doesn't yell, who listens, who stays." I didn't answer. I couldn't. My chest felt tight, like my body was warning me to get up, to walk away. But I didn't. Then she reached out and gently touched my hand. "Do you ever wonder what it would be like if life had taken a different path?" I looked at her, and for a brief second, I saw a version of myself reflected in her eyes, one I wasn't sure I recognized. A version that had no boundaries, no rules. Just emotions. Raw and dangerous. "Lena, I think we're crossing a line here," I said quietly. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned in, her voice trembling now. "I just wanted to feel something again. To feel wanted." She pressed her forehead against mine. I could feel her breath. I didn't kiss her. But I didn't move either. After a long moment, I stood up abruptly, heart pounding. "I can't do this," I said. She looked down, not ashamed, but disappointed. "Okay," she whispered. "I understand." I walked away, locking myself in the office, but the damage was already done. The air had changed. There was no going back to how things were. Even though we hadn't crossed that physical line, yet, emotionally, we had stepped far beyond what could be excused. And I wasn't sure I had the strength to stop what was clearly just beginning. It was a Friday night, and Emily was working the overnight shift again. She had kissed me goodbye on her way out, exhausted but trusting. "Don't wait up," she said with a smile. "I'll probably crash at the hospital break room if it gets too late." Those words gave me a strange feeling, freedom laced with guilt. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Lena was in the kitchen again, making pasta. She moved confidently now, barefoot and humming, like she'd lived here for years. I sat at the table, pretending to scroll through my phone while trying to avoid watching her. But she noticed me. "You're quiet tonight," she said without looking up. "Just tired," I replied. She nodded. "You want wine?" I almost said no, but she had already opened a bottle. She poured 2 glasses and sat across from me, her eyes softer than usual, almost apologetic. "I'm sorry about the other day," she said. "I crossed a line. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." Her voice was sincere, and for a moment, I believed it. I nodded. "It's okay. It's been confusing." We ate in silence for a while, the mood oddly calm. After dinner, we ended up on the couch watching an old movie, something Emily hated, but Lena claimed was her favorite. We laughed a little, shared comments about the terrible acting, and somewhere in the middle of it all, something shifted again. 1 glass of wine became 2. I don't know whether it dulled my judgment or gave me an excuse. But I started noticing things I shouldn't have: the way her shirt fell off her shoulder, the way her laughter curled around my ears like a whisper. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I didn't move. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. I could feel her breath near my neck. "I feel safe with you," she whispered. "Do you feel anything when you're around me?" I didn't answer right away. My heart was thudding. My hands trembled. She turned her face toward mine, close enough that I could see the reflection of the movie screen in her eyes. "Tell me you don't want this," she said, "and I'll stop." I should have. I should have stood up, walked away, called Emily anything. But I didn't. Instead, I kissed her. And just like that, we crossed every boundary. It wasn't tender. It wasn't romantic. It was messy and wrong and intense. A storm we both knew we shouldn't have walked into, but neither of us cared in that moment. We were chasing something: escape, validation, lust, maybe all of it. When it was over, she lay beside me on the couch, tracing circles on my chest. I stared at the ceiling, drowning in silence. "I didn't think this would happen," I whispered. "I did," she replied softly. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just a mistake. This was a disaster I had willingly stepped into. And now, there was no turning back. The morning after felt like waking up in someone else's life. I stood in the shower for nearly half an hour, the water running hot, scalding even, but it didn't wash away the guilt. No matter how hard I scrubbed, I couldn't erase what I'd done. When I stepped out, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. My eyes looked hollow. My face wore the weight of a man who had crossed a line he couldn't uncross. Lena was in the kitchen again, cooking like nothing had happened. She greeted me with a cheerful "good morning," as if we hadn't betrayed the one person who trusted us both the most. I didn't reply. I just grabbed my keys and left the house without another word. I drove around for hours, aimlessly, trying to think, trying to feel less like a stranger in my own skin. Every time I pictured Emily's face, my stomach turned. Her laugh, her gentle touch, her unwavering trust, it all haunted me now. When I finally came home, Lena was curled up on the couch watching TV. She looked up at me with soft eyes and a faint smile. "Are we okay?" she asked. I stared at her, unsure how to answer. "No," I finally said. "We're not." Lena didn't look surprised. Instead, she stood up, walked over, and placed her hand on my chest. "You don't have to be scared of what you feel," she said. "It wasn't supposed to happen," I replied. "But it did," she whispered. "And you didn't stop it." That night, I tried to sleep beside Emily like nothing was wrong. But guilt is a heavy pillow. I laid there, eyes wide open, listening to her slow, peaceful breathing beside me. I wanted to confess. I wanted to wake her up, fall at her feet, and beg for forgiveness. But I couldn't. Cowardice kept my lips sealed. The days that followed were strange. Emily noticed my distance. She'd ask if something was wrong, and I'd say I was just tired or stressed. She believed me, at least on the surface. But I could feel the growing crack in the wall between us. Lena didn't leave. In fact, she started acting more at home than ever, wearing Emily's slippers, leaving her phone charging on my nightstand, cooking dinner without asking. She didn't act like a guest anymore. She acted like someone who belonged. One night, Emily laughed and said, "Lena's turning into our roommate." I forced a smile. "Yeah, she is." What Emily didn't know was that Lena had stopped sleeping in the guest room. Twice more, we let it happen. Not out of love, at least not for me, but out of something darker. Something like addiction. We were bound now by a shared secret and silent destruction. And every morning, I'd lay beside my wife, dying slowly in my own silence, wondering when, not if, it would all come crashing down. Because guilt, no matter how hard you try to hide it, always finds its way to the surface. Emily started noticing things. At first, it was small. A question here, a raised eyebrow there. She found one of her t-shirts folded in the guest room, one she hadn't worn in months. Weird, she said casually, holding it up. Did Lena borrow this? I shrugged. Maybe. You know how she's been staying longer. Emily smiled, but didn't say much. But I saw it in her eyes, the seed of doubt had been planted. Lena, on the other hand, seemed to thrive in the tension. She no longer cared to be subtle. She'd laugh too loud at my jokes during dinner, touch my arm a little too long, make inside comments only she and I understood. Once, while Emily stepped out to take a call, Lena leaned in and whispered, "She has no idea." It's almost thrilling. It made my stomach churn. I tried to pull away from her. I stopped sitting close, stopped responding to her glances, even started sleeping on the couch some nights, claiming back pain. But it was too late. The damage had already been done, and it was getting harder to pretend we hadn't crossed a line we were still deep inside. Then came the night everything began to unravel. Emily was cleaning under the couch, trying to find a lost earring. She suddenly called out, "Hey babe, is this Lena's?" I froze. She stood up holding a delicate, gold hoop earring. The problem was it wasn't Lena's. It was part of a pair I had bought for her last Christmas. Emily's. But it had clearly been under the couch for days, maybe longer. Her eyes narrowed as she looked at me. "I haven't worn these in months. Why was it under the couch?" I stumbled. "Maybe it fell and just got stuck under there?" She nodded slowly, not convinced. That night, she was quieter than usual. I saw her glancing at Lena across the room with a new expression, one I hadn't seen before. Not annoyance. Not jealousy. Suspicion. Later, as we lay in bed, she turned toward me. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Do you think Lena's being too comfortable here?" I swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" "She walks around like this is her house. She wears my things, uses my perfume. She even took one of my scarves. And sometimes, I don't know, the way she looks at you. It's weird." I forced a laugh. "You're overthinking." But she didn't laugh. She stared at me for a long moment. "I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just watching." That word hit harder than a scream. Watching. It meant the mask I was wearing had started to slip. The cracks in our mirror-perfect life were showing, and Emily wasn't blind anymore. I didn't sleep that night. And the next morning, I saw her phone sitting beside a search tab open with one sentence typed in, "How do you know if your partner is cheating with someone you trust?" And that's when I knew the countdown to destruction had already started. The days that followed were a slow-motion car crash, silent, inevitable, and sickening. Emily wasn't asking questions anymore. But that didn't mean she had stopped looking for answers. Her silence was more terrifying than confrontation. She watched me closely, not like a wife, but like a stranger studying something broken, trying to figure out when the crack had started. Lena, on the other hand, seemed completely unbothered. If anything, she had become bolder. She no longer waited for Emily to leave the room before brushing past me too closely or making passing remarks laced with innuendo. I started avoiding her, avoiding eye contact, avoiding conversations. But she didn't care. One evening, I walked in to find Emily sitting at the kitchen table, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Lena was standing by the sink, unusually quiet. Emily's phone was in front of her, and she slid it across the table to me. "You left your email open on the laptop," she said flatly. My heart dropped. Displayed on the screen was a message from Lena, short, cryptic, but damning. "Last night was different. I felt like you were holding back. Are you scared she knows?" I stared at the words like they were written in fire. "Emily," I began, but she raised her hand. "No lies, David. I need to hear it. All of it. From you." I looked at Lena, who stood silently, offering no defense. Her face was blank, emotionless. "I didn't mean for it to happen," I said, my voice cracking. "It was a mistake. A terrible, selfish mistake. Emily let out a bitter laugh. A mistake? That's what you call it. I nodded, ashamed, trembling. It was never meant to be anything more. Lena suddenly spoke, voice cold and calm. That's not what you said when you were in my bed. Emily's eyes shot toward her. You were my friend. My best friend. Lena smiled sadly. And you never saw me. Not really. You always made everything about yourself. Maybe I was just tired of being invisible. Emily stood up slowly, her voice shaking with pain. So you destroyed my marriage because you felt invisible? No, Lena said quietly. I destroyed your marriage because he let me. The room fell into silence, so heavy it felt like the walls might collapse inward. Emily turned to me, her eyes filled with heartbreak. I trusted you. I gave you everything. And you gave me this? Tears slipped down her cheeks, but she didn't wipe them. She didn't flinch. She just stared. Then, without another word, she walked upstairs, packed a small overnight bag, and walked out the door. I didn't chase her. I couldn't. I sat on the edge of the couch, unable to breathe, unable to think. Lena stood there for a few more moments before speaking again. She was going to find out eventually, she whispered. I didn't respond. Because by now, I wasn't even angry at her. I was angry at myself. For letting it happen. For losing everything I once held sacred. And for realizing too late that what I had destroyed could never be rebuilt. The house felt dead without Emily. Her absence wasn't just physical. It echoed through every wall, every room, every object she once touched. The soft hum of her laughter was gone, replaced by a cold, unbearable silence. The home we had built together now felt like a shell, hollow and heavy with regret. She hadn't called. She hadn't texted. I didn't blame her. For the first time in weeks, Lena was no longer comfortable. She still lingered in the house for a few days after Emily left, perhaps waiting for me to return to her arms, to choose her like she believed I would. But I didn't. I avoided her, slept in the spare room, and barely spoke. When she tried to touch me, I pulled away. There was no romance left in it, only shame. One morning, she stood by the doorway, suitcase in hand. I thought I could be more, she said quietly. But maybe I was just your mistake too. I didn't argue. I didn't ask her to stay. She walked out without another word. And then I was alone. The days bled together. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I wandered around the house like a ghost, stopping in the kitchen to stare at the mug Emily used to drink from, or lingering by the laundry basket where her favorite cardigan still sat, untouched. I thought about calling her every single day. I drafted dozens of messages, typed out apologies that felt too small, deleted them all. What could I say that wouldn't sound empty? But eventually I wrote her a letter. Not to win her back. Not to fix what I had broken. Just to tell the truth. Emily, you were my best friend before you were my wife. You were the only person who ever believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And I betrayed you in the cruelest way, quietly, selfishly, and with full awareness of what I stood to lose. There's no excuse. No justifying it. I hurt you because I was weak, and I let someone else convince me that what we had wasn't enough. But it was. You were. If you never come back, I understand. If you never speak to me again, I'll deserve it. But I need you to know I see it all clearly now, what I had, and what I threw away. And I'll carry that weight for the rest of my life. I mailed it and didn't expect a response. Weeks passed. Then, one rainy evening, a letter arrived in return. It was short, only a few lines, but it said everything. I don't hate you. But I can't come back to someone who made me question my worth. I hope you learn from this, David. Because I'm still learning how to forgive myself for trusting you. And that was it. Final. Honest. Now, every day, I get up and face what I've done. I go to work. I come home. I live in the silence I created. There's no redemption arc here. Just truth, growth, and the memory of a woman I once loved enough to marry and hurt enough to lose. She came for a sleepover and she never left. But the one who truly disappeared was the woman who meant everything. 84.